Welcome back to The Chosen Life. I'm your host, The Chosen Lawyer, and believe it or not, the guest from our premiere episode, guest number one, Mr. George Tremis is back. George, believe it or not, you are on episode number 43. How far we have made it.
Wow, that's incredible. So glad to be back. Sooner than I thought, too. This is awesome.
Well, we kept saying that we're going to have you back to premiere in the new year at the time, but this is now appearance number 3 for you.
Yeah, I'm a lucky guy.
Well, listen, you're just too popular, man. So, the core people, they got to make it back. So appreciate you taking the time. We were discussing off air that the walls are a little barren right now. How come?
I'm in the middle of a move.
You got to love when the realtors are in the middle of their own moves, eh?
Well, what's ironic is I visited with some clients over Thanksgiving weekend, and, they asked me what's new. And I said, actually, I'm moving from Stony Creek to Oakville. And they said, oh, when are you doing that? Or when did you start? And I said, actually, it's happening in multiple moves because I can only afford so much time to move. And then I got to go on to work again and take care of my clients. But they said, you know what? Now you feel our pain. And I said, yes, I do.
Us being professionals, we assist people with their closings. We're not immune to the fun and trials and tribulations as well. Like, just so we all know, we're all in the same boat with it. So it's one thing when you're assisting a third party with it. When it's our own, we feel it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But it helps for relatability.
Absolutely, yes. And we can share war stories. But on the same token, it's fun to see them going off smoothly and getting into our new homes and then starting that fun. So you must be pretty jazzed about the new place.
I am. But I'm the type of person that, I look forward to the outcome afterwards, and that's what I shoot towards. So I just kind of go through the process that I have to get there. So I'll get really fired up once it's done.
Well, this is a big segue to today's episode because we're going off in a different direction. It's funny. Very often on The Chosen Life, we pick all sorts of different arenas, whether it's Hollywood acting, politics, music. Today, we're going back to our core because, a lot of times when we sit down together, myself with the guest, we'll talk about, what are our common passions, what are we into, and figure out a topic, that's relatable, but also that will help educate and inspire others. When I thought of Mr. George Tremis, what comes to me immediately is passion, motivation, and the constant search for success. And today's episode is all about motivation and how to find that success, how to find one's chosen life.
I love the topic. Love it.
And I see that there's a fine line, that's where we're going to really delve in today. And we're not going to hold back at all. Like we're going to take off the gloves. We're not going to sugarcoat it. We're going to be frank because, there's two camps, George. There's success and there's failure. And there's a line between it. And how passionate are we going to be to want to be in the successful camp versus how are we okay with staying in the failure camp?
I love it. I can't wait to speak on that.
Well, and we're going to leave failure aside for a moment. We will touch upon it because you know what? We'd be closing our eyes if we're going to say that failure is not a thing. Failure is a part of life. Failure could be great. Failure could be your best teaching tool. But I think that the problem is there's a lot of people out there that are ready to accept failure as a lifestyle for themselves and feel that there's nothing beyond that. And that's what we want to try to break out of. So when thinking today about success versus failure, one common topic that a lot of employers, managers talk about, I see this a lot in articles and seminars. I talk about it with people all the time, no matter what the industry is. When we're living today in the year 2022, what the heck is motivating people anymore? It seems like for years, we knew the secret formula of what can motivate people. It feels like all that's out the window, and it's a whole new set of factors which actually motivate people to want to quote unquote work and to thrive.
It's a great topic. Great topic. I think first and foremost, motivation is overplayed. It's overplayed, and I think motivation is very weak compared to the true drivers of performance and success. Which is more along the lines of discipline and some other things that I'll touch on. But first and foremost, You commented that it seems like we've lost the magic formula. I think that the fundamentals are still there. So this isn't me. This is Tony Robbins listening to his Personal Power in the 90s. It's pain and pleasure. At the end of the day, that never changes. Let's stick to the fundamentals. People seek out pleasure, they avoid pain. I think one of the big differences, though, is that, and I blame marketers and salespeople, and I fall into that category throughout the course of my career, for convincing people that you deserve it now. It's the entitlement mentality that's happening. So all of a sudden, pleasure should be a long-term thing and pain avoidance should be a short-term thing. But now people have taken pleasure and brought it to the short term. And that's where you set yourself up for failure, not success, because you're undermining the true fundamentals of success because of that. So that's where I think we've gone wrong.
It's an interesting point, because one of the first starting points is, I don't know, if I'm shopping in retail, getting a car fixed, any kind of service industry, getting a house cleaned, seems like there's a labor shortage. They're saying all this unemployment, everything else, yet all I'm meeting are employers that want to hire. And I'm telling them, how is it that you do not have the employees? And they say to me always the same thing: I can't find anybody who actually wants to work. So with the kind of jobs, is it the fact that people are just saying this job is beneath me, or I deserve to get paid more? I've done this job for a whole 3 months. I don't know what it is, but it just seems that coming out of the pandemic now, life going back to quote unquote normal, there's all these jobs out there, but yet nobody wants to get their hands dirty and actually build experience and grow in a position and in a field.
There's a whole mentality mind shift that's happened. So, and it's pervasive throughout that. Yeah, I think it's a combination though. A sense of I deserve more, everybody's special, everybody's supposed to be first place. That's not how the real world works. But unfortunately, we're producing generations like that, maybe over the last generation or two, but it's starting to become pervasive in society, I find.
Now, is it society? Is it with the parents? Is it with the teachers? Like, George, when you and I went to school back in the day, right? Things are a lot different. I remember, when I was in grade school, for instance, you had to get your work done. The teachers were very authoritative. They're not afraid to call home. The parents would say, back up the teachers. Then all of a sudden, as the younger generations came, the teachers started coddling them. And they're almost afraid of them because they can't even discipline anymore, because they have to write up a report and get in trouble. Parents get mad at the teachers. And now all of a sudden, the children are learning from a young age, all this entitlement. I don't have to work hard anymore. That's not fair. That's too much stress on me. And it just carries them through to the workforce. And they have this mentality all of a sudden of, wait a minute, I don't have to work that hard. That's not fair. That's not how life should be. I should have a balance. I should be able to go and chill. Well, yeah, great, but you're not getting anything done, so nobody's going to pay you.
So I'll just make a side comment. And I just finished a book called Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. And I believe she wrote it in the 50s or 60s. I'm not entirely sure, but it's a great book. It's super long, but it touches on a lot of the challenges and issues we're facing today, which is very interesting. But to more directly speak to what you just said, which is a very valid point, I think it's three things. Parenting, and I'll give you an example, right? I think storytelling is incredibly powerful. I grew up, and at the time when I was young, I would be very frustrated with my father. I didn't like him much, I'll be honest. But the things he taught me that I value and respect him for today, for helping me become a man. And let's not get silly about, masculinity and what it means. It's to be a man, to be responsible, to take responsibility. That's how I'm using the definition, okay? My family's always been entrepreneurs. We've had our own companies and such. And I remember I was at my father's business one day and I was standing there and I was young, early teens, maybe 12. And he said, "What are you doing, George?" And I said, "Dad, I'm standing here." Obviously. And he's like, "Don't get smart with me, first of all. Second of all, what's this on your shoulders?" And I go, "It's my head, Dad." And he said, "What's in your head?" And I said, "A brain." And he goes, "Well, maybe you should use it. Pick up a broom, sweep, make yourself useful." I don't know if that parenting exists, to a large degree anymore. And I think more of that would help. So that's the parenting. The school. So I grew up in Montreal, and grade 7, I remember when I went into grade 7, I had quite an awakening, because that's junior high. in Montreal. But to your point about the teachers, I was given hours of homework every night, hours. In fact, relatives would come over, let's say, and they'd be like, "What are you doing, George?" And I said, "Homework." And they're like, 8 o'clock at night. And I said, "Yeah, I got to get it done." I don't know if that kind of discipline is taught anymore. And lastly, who teaches our kids, let's say? Social media now. And what is social media saying? Well, I rent the Bugatti, I rent the venue, I talk about being a big millionaire, cash money, I didn't have to work. And that's what they're being taught. I don't need to go to school. I'm going to be a YouTube millionaire. Get out of here, old man. You don't know what you're talking about. Okay, bud. Okay, kid. And I think that's the problem. And the key word I said there, discipline. So I don't believe in motivation as much as I do discipline. You can be motivated to lose weight. You can be motivated to make money. I want the boat. I want the yacht. I want the Corvette. And I said that on purpose. I want the Corvette, but do you have the discipline to do what it takes to get it?
And that's where I tell a lot of professionals, regardless of what industry you're in, there's always going to be competition. There's no doubt about it. I don't care if you're a realtor, a lawyer, an accountant, a plumber. There's always going to be somebody competing against you. There's constant in-stream of new people through school, through apprenticeship, and there'll be people hungry out there to take your work. And I tell them all the time, you know what? I don't really care. Bring on as much competition as possible, because if you work the hardest and you use this, you'll always beat them. It's not going to matter at all, but unfortunately, people don't want to work that hard a lot, unfortunately, in this day and age. But it's great because for the people that are willing to put in the work, it puts them light years ahead. When you bring up parenting, it's funny because my mother only taught me really one thing heavily. Many things she did, but like one really stuck. From the time I was a young kid, if I asked a question on how to do something, how to put something together, all she said to me was common sense. Common sense. Use common sense. It'll get through everything through life. And you know what? Living as many years as I have on the earth, she's right. I can see now, I've never done this before. If somebody brings me a new task, never seen it, never tried it, just think it through and use common sense. But when you try to teach common sense to the younger generation, they want the answer immediately. They'll try to find it on YouTube or Google it, and they'll give up right away. I can't find it. Can you help me with this? And I can't tell you times I've worked with young lawyers and they come to me in a panic. How do I do this? I've never done this before. Da, da, da. Okay, stop for a second. Have you thought about this for more than 30 seconds? Have you sat and mapped it out for yourself? Did you try to come up with a solution on your own? If you think about it, common sense, it's staring at you right there, But they want the easy solution. And, I talk about this with my partner, David, all the time. We can either do the work for them or we can give them the tools to help them achieve it on their own. And somebody teaching you the tools is so valuable, because then in the future, you're the one who's going to be teaching those tools as well. But if somebody's doing it for you all the time, you're never going to get anywhere, because that person is not there all of a sudden. What you going to do? And I can tell you, for me, I've always felt the worst thing ever. What motivated me, I never want to be caught with my pants down, so to speak, and saying, I don't know. If I don't know something, I tell somebody, listen, let me check into this. I'm going to get back to you, but I'm going to do the research. I'm going to make sure, and I'm going to come back having that answer. And that's what I try to teach young lawyers and any professional. Get your stuff together. I don't get motivated by money. That doesn't do very much. Money will come and go. It's fine. I want to be the best at what I'm going to be at. And I want to know, I look in the mirror at the end of the night, I did everything humanly possible. It's on me. If I didn't get something done, it's on me, but I worked my damn butt off. That's what motivates me. When I look today and I talk to employers and ask them what motivates people, people are shrugging the shoulders, George. They have no idea. They're like, I could pay all the money in the world. I can give them 1,000 weeks of vacation. They can have hybrid, work from home, whatever. They still don't want to work. It's like, what the heck is actually when it comes back to this topic of what motivates people? I'm not sure anymore, because you think that bonuses and money, or is it job title? Is it prestige? But in this day and age, I'm almost clueless. I'm dumbfounded to tell you what will actually motivate a person, because you can't write a formula anymore and say X percentage of people are going to be motivated by this, because they're not.
So the half-life of, and there's lots of studies on this, the half-life of money as a motivator is very poor, very, very poor. It's short-lived. And I think that in a lot of cases, it's a lack of vision for purpose, a vision of one's purpose and what they want to do. And I mean, it's so intricate, but it's also tied into the word you use, responsibility, the ability to choose your responses to a situation. That's what it means, but people don't think of it that way. Responsibility is like a bad word to a lot of people. And really, it's actually freedom and empowering. If you don't have responsibility or the ability to choose your response to situations, you're just a puppet to the currents of life. No, thank you. I want more control over my life. So I think that that's a key piece that people need to embrace, and then find a vision, like a performance purpose, or going back to, you know, what you were telling me about the wise words from your mom, the uncommon sense is one thing. I want to call it uncommon sense, but also understanding one's why. Like your why ties into your purpose. You know, and a lot of people use that term, like, what's your why? But what does that mean? To me, it means you found a purpose and a vision to achieve that purpose. You know, why was I born? That's the second greatest day of your life, when you're born and when you find out why. And only you can tell you that.
Well, I think interrelated, if we're going to think about the positives and how to get the best out of people, we have to understand when we're not getting the best out of ourselves. There's success and there's failure. And, you know, bringing back to grade school again and how the mentality is taught, I hate to say we're teaching a weak society, but it's different now. Used to be back in the day, you had a race, you had gold, silver, bronze. Now we have participation awards and ribbons, and we don't want people to feel bad about themselves. So they don't have to worry about losing. You didn't lose, you know, you showed up, you win an award, you know? And I don't know if we're teaching the youngsters that killer instinct, so to speak, because I don't know if it's going to drive them through into business. It's really hard to measure the motivation of somebody when they are prepared to accept failure. When failure, it's one thing when I accept failure in the sense, George, that I see it as a motivator. I see it as I got to learn from this, and this is a good thing. This is not bad. I tried my best. I failed. Now I can change the course, but I'm going to be better off for it. But if I'm going to fail, and I'm going to fail again and again and again, and I'm not going to change my course, and I'm going to keep doing it over and over because I'm satisfied with it. I've done the bare minimum. I don't really care. This is not worth my time. It's too hard. It's outside of my skill sets. I'm not getting paid enough. I could care less. It's not my business. I'm good with failure. Too bad it's on somebody else. It's their fault. It's their fault. It's my fault. Not really. You know, how can you get motivated if you're accepting failure as a lifestyle?
I don't think you can. I don't think you can. I think they're contradictory. And, you know, right at the outset, you talked about kind of, let's say, two camps or two places where people land, success and failure. I think the reason why people land in the failure camp is because too often it's seen as two different things, but they're actually not. They should be in the same camp, because failure is what pushes you forward. Or like Les Brown says, you know, or maybe it wasn't Les Brown, but anyway, very famous quote, fall forward. You know, if I'm going to fall forward. If I'm going to fail forward. So if you look at it that way, all it is part of your process of development to achieve that vision, that purpose that you have. And actually, you know, and this is Jocko Willink, I'm sure of it. He said, you know, there is no failure other than death, because that's the only time you truly fail, because you have no other opportunities to try to make it happen. So failure is actually a mental block. It's not an actual block in reality. You only fail when you stop trying. And I really do believe in that. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, not saying it's not going to be a battle, but you only lose when you stop fighting.
And that's one of the things, you know, I'll tell you about, I think we've talked about this before, maybe very briefly, but I had a job out in college, university, and I was working a parking lot as an attendant. Okay. And my job was to sign the people in, sign them out as they're coming in and out every day. And you see some of the same people, you know, George, and they'll have the smoke and they'll have the cup of coffee in the same hand. I don't know how they do this, you know, and they're coming to work at like 9 a.m., right? They're drinking the coffee, having the smoke, and just the defeated look in their eyes. It's not even 9 a.m. and they're already defeated, you know? And when they're leaving the office, the same defeated look. They're going home. I bet you the pattern is continuing. And that's where, you know, we all have a bad day. It's fine. we shrug it off. We say, tomorrow's gonna be better. I'll go to bed now. Maybe we have a bad week. Maybe we have a bad month. But when you start letting it snowball and saying, you know what, this is my lifestyle, that concerns me. And the point you just hit on there, exact, when you're saying, well, I'm giving up, you know, and there's a variety of reasons why people give up. They say, you know what, it's too late for me to go back to school. I don't like my career. I don't like my relationship. I'm too old. It's too past my time. I agree with you in the sense that until you're dead, it's never too late. I've seen people take career changes in their 50s, go back to university. You know, they were that motivated. They wanted to make something of their lives. You know, they wanted to change the course. And I would ask anybody that goes home and just says, you know what, I'm going through the motions right now and, you know, it's pointless. I can't change it. Yes, you can. But if you decide in your mind you can't, then how are you possibly ever going to motivate to go beyond? You know, again, it's one thing to fail and to accept it and to learn from it. But when it becomes a lifestyle, that scares the heck out of me.
Because they don't have that anchor. They don't have that foundation of performance, you know, performance and purpose. I actually even have a workshop on this that I've taught, you know, different industries, people in different industries, and it ties into what I've coined the performance pyramid. So you got to build that foundation of having a purpose to be able to reach the performance that you want to reach. And it's very critical, but in a lot of cases, they don't have that vision that will fuel the motivation that will be driven by discipline, because that's the way it goes, right? You got to be motivated to, or sorry, you have to have the purpose that motivates you and the discipline to put it into action. Because it's like a bungee cord. The more you want to break free from the norm, the more you want to be extraordinary, the more that it tries to pull you back, right? It's a deferral to the mean or the average. And so it's hard work to try to break free from the pack. You know, and if you don't have something driving your motivation and the discipline to do the hard work, it's not going to happen. It's way easier to get that instant gratification of the cigarette, bad for your health long term, the coffee shot because you didn't sleep on time when you knew you were supposed to, and all the other things, instead of waking up early, getting it done, showing up, putting in extra at work, so that 3 months from now, a year from now, you get promoted. And eventually you go from, you know, just taking the orders at the parking lot and checking people in to managing multiple operations. But you don't get there without those three pieces.
Well, I did not know you were giving seminars on it. That's fantastic. And I would ask you, if you give us an example, if somebody was in the crowd right now and said to you, like, I want to break through, I want to be free of this life of failure and I want to make something of myself, you know, where would you point them? Like, how does it begin?
It's you can't see it, unfortunately, but you got to start.
We got the performance pyramid. Okay.
Yeah. So passion, persistence, and purpose. And then those drive to motivation, and discipline puts it into action. So there's even a one pager that I give out in my workshop, and it's yielded great results because people, you have to build a pyramid from the ground up. You have to build your future and your performance from the ground up in your head.
You could say them again. Passion, performance,
passion, purpose.
Passion, purpose,
passion, persistence, and purpose.
Passion, persistence, purpose.
Yeah.
3 P's that don't sound anything like failure to me. Anybody who invokes those 3 will get somewhere. And if not, they'll find a way.
Failure is the rungs that you put your hands in as you climb the pyramid, if you want to use that analogy. Every failure gives you a foothold onto the next level.
Well, when I'm measuring now as far as people that are able to springboard themselves into leaders. So, you know, the generic term is leader versus follower. It's not necessarily always follower, but it's now with hierarchies, the way they work, you know, there's a lot of even level. There's also hierarchies. It depends on how you view leadership. But at the end of the day, there's something special that separates a leader from the pack. You look at every organization, you look at Army, Navy, you know, you look at military, and you think of companies, it's not that far off. You know, you don't have 1,000 lieutenants and 1 foot soldier, you know? There's a reason why there's a select few that go into the ranks of leaders and go beyond. In your mind, when you see somebody that's able to progress to a leader, I presume that it's somebody that is motivated. It is somebody that does not accept failure as a lifestyle, are able to invoke it within themselves, and then are able to bring it out from others. True or false?
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. And those tie into the things we talked about before and some of the other, I guess, factors. So, great leaders, not only do they ask why are we doing this, and share that vision with the people that want to rally beside them and run forward to an objective or a goal or a magnificent obsession, I've heard it referred to as, right? They spread this magnificent obsession amongst other people. And that's what creates the leadership, is that people choose to follow. Now, there's also organizations like the military, and historically corporations were, 80-90% of the CEOs were from the military, because that was that time in that generation, I guess, but it was the discipline that they got in the military. One of the key topics of our conversation today, right? So it's a discipline, the magnificent obsession, and also the ability to ask why not. So if you look at somebody like Jack Welch, amazing at GE what he did. He was more hardcore discipline, and he always wanted to ask why. Why are we doing this like this? So he's kind of more of the old school. If you look at the new school, still the same fundamental principles apply. Elon Musk, he's very disciplined, very determined, and very driven, like the 3 Ds of the motivation in my mind. And he's got this magnificent obsession. And he always asks, why not? Why can't I, build a Tesla and have charging stations around the world? Why can't I do SpaceX and send people to the moon? No, yes, I can. And that's the difference, because they're not willing to let the bungee cord pull them down to the average. They choose the extra in everything they do in life to be extraordinary. And I think that's really the key driver.
I've heard before people telling me I can't be a leader because I wasn't born into it. You're either from birth a leader or you're not. And I chuckled the same way as you, because I don't know too many people that from birth became leaders, And I think today of people that I know growing up that I see today as leaders, and they sure as heck were not leaders when they were 5, 10, and 15. In fact, they were the more quieter ones and the ones absorbing information, but they weren't the outspoken ones. It's that listening versus speaking. And a lot of leaders I know that are very successful today did that because they actually learned more how to listen rather than to lead.
Absolutely. I think that ties into the difference between responding versus reacting. So our society is very reaction based. And this is by Urban Meyer, I think his name is, Above the Line. He wrote a book, and he talks about the difference between responding and reacting. So these people that are more reflective and full of thought, as you've referred to them, that they don't just speak out just like that. It's not that they're not capable of being eloquent and speaking well, but they choose to be they absorb information, they assess it, they ask why, and then they respond as opposed to reacting. So I think that's the key that they possess, that sets them up to be leaders in the future.
And, there's two kinds of leaders in this day and age, and, we won't get too much into politics wise, but I've seen the kind of leaders that said, I'm speaking logic to you. I can show you the facts. This makes sense. So you should definitely listen to me and follow me because I'm showing you the course. Versus somebody who comes and says, I know what you want. I hear you. Let me give you what you want, And unfortunately, we're based in a society today that I can sit back and watch. I'm saying they're literally like feeding the sheep, and the sheep are just following. They're following. They're loving it, And it's because people want what they want, not what's good for them or what's logical. And it blows my mind. And that's when it becomes the whole wolf versus sheep. Are you able to see beyond that and make your own assessments, or are you going to follow the herd? And it's very hard sometimes for people to break out of that herd mentality.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. Definitely, that's a tough one.
It's just it's obviously we can't go there too much based on where life is at today, but definitely speaking to other leaders, people have to be recognizant of that, and I wish more society would wake up to that and be able to say, what, I want to think for myself. I'm going to make my own assessments and not just do what I'm being told, And that's where I could tell you, when I operate a business and I have an employee comes to me and says, you know what, I don't agree with this structure at all. I'm like, you know what? That's fantastic. I don't mind at all. Second guess all you want, but I don't want to receive complaints. When you have solutions, come back to me.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
all I want, and that's one of the things that I think I hit my boiling point for many years as far as trying to lead is people love to complain, but put them in the driver's seat. It's not so easy, is it? So I always encourage people, you know what? If you do want to make a change, don't present the issue, present the solution. Put the time into that.
Absolutely. I mean, at one point in my career, I owned multiple body shops. So auto body collision.
I thought you meant like body shops, Sorry.
No. I go to the shop to build the body. So in these body shops, I think at one point I had almost 20 employees. And I had this expression, if you will, that I would say to them. I welcome feedback. I welcome challenge. I welcome other ways to doing things. Ask me why. I can't preach it and not allow other people to apply it to me. Ask me why. But to your point, bring me a solution. Don't come complaining. And if you have a complaint, no problem, but then I'll find a solution. If you don't like it, give me a better one. So until you tell me another way, it's my way. So maybe that's a bit of a dictator in some ways, but I framed it in the sense of, listen, somebody's got to drive us forward and lead. But I'm open-minded. Until then, don't complain about my choices unless you're going to offer alternatives.
But
Heavy is the crown.
But if you can show an employee, you bring the solution, we will talk about it, and it makes sense, we will invoke this fairly quickly, if not very quickly, that blows their mind. They're like, wow, I have a tangible say in this. That's very empowering, and I think that's a really good way to motivate. But again, you need people to take a vested interest and think of where they work as their own business. My mother used to tell me an expression when we would be someplace and the employee was just very lax, and they said, it's not their mother or father's business. They don't care. You know what? If the place burns down, they'll just go get another job. Whereas you see people that literally treat the business like it's their own. That's where, from an employer standpoint and from a business standpoint, when your employees have skin in the game, so to speak, and they have vested interest to see you succeed, they will succeed. I think that's a very good, formable relationship if people can see that big picture.
Well, this is the thing too. I think it starts with the business owner or leader's mindset, in the sense of I started a little boutique consulting company. I still have a few clients. 12 years ago, I think it was now. So one of my long-term clients, family business, they built it from the ground up, first generation immigrants. I have huge respect for them and what they achieved. But oftentimes they complain to me about the staff. And I try to tell them, but they're very set in their mentality. I try to tell them, listen, if they were like you, they would be you. Do you understand? They wouldn't be working for you if they were just like you. So you can't expect them to be just like you. And as soon as you start to accept them for who they are and what they're doing, your mindset shifts and it opens up to be more like yours, saying, hey, no problem. You know what? I understand you're not necessarily going to see things my way and understand to the same level because we're operating in different areas. But, here, let me help you and show you, as opposed to being frustrated and saying, why can't you get this? Why don't you care enough? Don't worry about that. They're not you, or they would be you. And I think that's something they got to get their mind right about the staff. At least in small to medium-sized businesses, I find this, because it doesn't have that formalized corporate structure to kind of create process around that.
And that's where it's so refreshing for companies. Instead of trying to slot an employee into the role you think that you want done, figure out their strengths and create a position that plays to their strengths. You're going to be so much better off.
Absolutely. And what's really cool about that? Sorry, just a side thought.
No, for sure.
There was a philosophy at one point about, identify your strengths and then fix your weaknesses. I used to believe in that. And now I've shifted to, no. You can spend X units of energy trying to fix a weakness, or you can say, I'll make sure it's at a sufficient level, but I'll put my energy into my strengths. And I think that's the key thing, is people also need to identify their strengths, which would also help them, focus on success versus failure. Because too often, if we go back, just touch on that topic, I'm not strong enough. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough this. I don't have enough that. No, what do you have? And build off that.
Like, George, I can't draw a straight line for my life, and I'm never going to be a good dancer.
You don't need to.
Why bother? I could go spend 1,000 hours learning how to dance and I still will never be that great. Or I could take those 1,000 hours, pour into stuff that I'm really interested in or good at. I'll be so much more ahead. I agree with you, because trying to just be well-rounded ain't going to get you there, But that's where I think people need to really embrace their strengths, really identify what they're good at, what they're passionate about, try to steer that towards their life. People that have a job but do something they absolutely love to do, it doesn't feel like you're working ever, and that's a
Mhm.
hard concept for people to grasp because there's this mentality as well. How's work? Oh, it's so bad. I'm so tired. My boss is this, my work is that. Well, why is that? Your job is what your job is. It's a question of how you perceive it. But if you doing something and you perceive it to be great, you jump out of bed. You're like, "Yay, I can't wait to get there." I don't see that many people that jump out of bed with that kind of energy, and they should.
But Jonathan, the devil I know is so much safer. It's so much safer than the devil of making a change. Or what if I actually succeed and I have to be something I don't know if I can be? It's fear. So fear plays into it and keeps people in failure to a large degree. And I mean, I touch on this in my book I'm writing as well. It holds back sales professionals so badly. And the book's not all about mindset, but I mean, you can't talk about, technical skills and things without understanding the mind as a foundation or part of the integral whole. So I think fear really plays into it, whether it stops realtors from making that call, knocking on the door, asking for the business, or salespeople just asking for the close, because we don't want rejection. And in fact, we're indoctrinated to fear rejection, to fear judgment by society right from a young age. I remember this. I mean, I was a chubby kid, so I got picked on. So I got used to trying to avoid people making fun of me because I'm trying to avoid pain, right? So I don't speak up.
1000%.
I don't express my intelligence or anything until those that are blessed to reach this point where they get comfortable in their own skin stop fearing fear. This is me. Unfortunately, I think in a lot of cases, it takes hitting your 40s maybe before you start to realize that, but darn it. I mean, if I had a child, I would do my best to get them to that point at a younger age because it'll set them up for more success.
Well, another part about success versus failure when we go to the next realm is this whole idea, is it better to be lucky or good? And there's another thought that there's just some people that are just so lucky. They got horseshoes up their butts and things just come natural to them. And no matter what I'm going to do, I'm good at something, but I don't have luck on my side. How much do you believe, George, in luck versus being good?
Well, I don't want either. I want to be great. Let me just start with that. And that ties into the leadership, by the way. I don't accept the two options given. I'm going to pick a different one. So I don't accept the status quo. And I'll say that I think that, so it comes back also to control. Do I want to be lucky? Because lucky is something outside of me. It's not something I control. And if I had a magic wand to guarantee that everything I did turned out lucky, yeah, maybe, but it's still not in my control, or I'm just relying on this magic wand. So I would rather rely on the things like being good or being great or working towards that, because now again, I can be responsible or able to choose my response around that and take actions to help me go from good to great,
But
as
it
opposed
does
to just relying on luck.
But it does seem in the world of success versus failure, when the success comes, they come in bunches, and when failure comes, they come in bunches. That's just the way it is. And you feel like the luckiest person in the world, and you feel like the unluckiest person in the world. But it's funny because if you actually have to self-reflect back, a lot of it subconsciously is the luck you made for yourself. You just don't even realize it. And again, it begins all with that mentality. When something hits you in the face and you're like, oh boy, man, that did not go my way. You can get really excited and say, wow, I really learned a lot from that. I'm gonna be so better off. And you're like, wow, nothing's going my way. This sucks. And then you kind of slump your shoulders and you no longer have that pep in your step. And then what will happen? You're gonna attract more negativity and more failure. That's
I
that's what
love
I
that.
that's what I tend to find. And the people that are quote unquote lucky, they're the ones that, no matter how big or small an organization is or a company, there's always the people that fall through the cracks. They just know how to sweet talk at the coffee machine. They get somebody to do their work. They pass it off as themselves. They can BS themselves for a while. They're the lucky, quote unquote, but really what they are is con artists. But eventually they're gonna get found out. And eventually people are gonna smell it. And the luck runs out, meaning that the BS runs out. The ones that are actually really, really good or great, as you put it, eventually will always rise to the top, in my opinion.
100%. And when I said I love it, not only the topic, but when
Mhm.
you said pep in your step, I like that expression, and it kind of brings to mind the fact that it's holistic. It's from the ground up. It's from your feet to your head. You got pep in your step because you got positive in your brain. And I think that's huge. And that's what creates what people coin as luck on a consistent basis. Because I'll tell you right now, I didn't write a check for $1 million, put it on my wall, look at it every day, and get to where I am. And sell no houses, build no businesses, train nobody, write no books, nothing. No. You had to do the work. I had to have the pep in my step and the positive in my brain. And the more I focused on those things, the more I went from good to great in my, personal professional achievements. So I 100% agree with you. I think you nailed it.
I used to have a friend that we were quite close, and it's funny because sometimes things went my way, they didn't go so great. Things went his way, they didn't go so great. But his wife at the time always used to say to me, "You're so lucky. It's not fair. No matter what you do, you always bounce back, and you just got that luck. My husband doesn't have that luck." And I'm thinking to myself, I've fallen, and I couldn't say it because no one's going to listen anyways. But I was going to say, I've fallen on my face just as many times as he has. And the only difference is that I get up, I try to plot a new course of action, and I'm going to work that much harder. Whereas what I used to see in him was he would accept the failure, and there's always someone else to blame. It was never his fault. It was his boss's fault. It was life's fault. It was the company's fault. Somebody was always to blame. And people that like to blame others and have no accountability themselves, I don't think they're ever going to make far in life. That's just not the way it's going to work. When you can stand up and say, the buck starts with me. You know what? Somebody didn't like me and things didn't work out. I put myself in that position. I could have done things differently, or I could have taken myself out of that situation. But the buck always stops with number one. That's how it is. And I think it was how preposterous it was, because I had to bust my butt to rearrange things always to get to somewhere. And here I'm being accused of being lucky. And I felt like the most unlucky person on the planet, because as soon as something goes well, I got to work all of a sudden 10 times harder.
Because it's so much easier to say, oh, well, he came from the right family, or he grew up at the, in the right place, or had the right network, or somebody gave. Okay, you can focus all your effort on these things, or you can take responsibility. Like, and if with my group of agents too, sometimes I'll tell them things when we're talking about a particular deal or something, and I'll say, well, I don't want to should have all over you, but you should have done this. And I'm only telling you because you need to know for next time. And I tell them, you may not always like what I have to say, but I'm coming from an honest place and a place of sincere caring. I want to see you succeed. And so you may not like what I have to say, but you need to hear it. And this for all your listeners and viewers and everything, I think this is one of the biggest takeaways from our conversation is, whenever possible, challenge yourself to take responsibility, the ability to respond to a situation instead of react. Because the reactionary, and it's in me, it's in you, I'm sure of it, everybody, because we're too conditioned to have that little voice or that voice on our shoulder saying, hey, it's not your fault. You were set up to fail. Don't worry. No. Okay, maybe these things happen. Something cannot be your fault, but it's 100% your responsibility to do something about it. And Will Smith says this all the time too. And I'll cite different people because I make it a daily practice, and we can talk about consistency and how that plays into success. To listen to thought-provoking videos and podcasts like yours and different ones, because they grow and expand me. I already know what I know, but I don't know what I don't know. So I need people like you and others to teach me.
But think, those people, it's something I was going to touch upon, and we'll touch upon on this stage. But there are people that are born into money, and there are people that are born into nothing and create the wealth, And the people that have the silver spoon in their mouth, that have the money already in their pockets, some learn how to work hard and grow it. But very often it's very easy to say, you know what, I'm good. You know what, I already have enough money for my lifetime, so I'm just going to enjoy the ride, and that's it. The person that doesn't know where their next meal is coming from, or if they're going to pay their rent that month, those are the hungry ones. And I'm amazed to see the people who are self-made millionaires, or now it's tens of millions, but to see when they build it from nothing, I have a lot of respect for that, because that is very, very difficult. But when you have that motivation, that drive, and to find the way, man, you're unstoppable. But then all of a sudden, very easily now they become second, third generation. And are they going to teach their kids the same work ethic? I don't know.
And I don't don't know. That comes back to the beginning, right?
Yeah.
The parenting, the schooling, and society, what they're teaching.
I don't want little Jimmy or little Bethany to have to struggle the way I did. I want them to have more opportunities than I did. But on the other hand, when we enable them that way, we're not necessarily doing them any favors. And that's where I think ultimately it comes down to it. It's one thing to accept failure and live in a life of failure. It's another very different one to say, I want to succeed. I want to get ahead. And I get asked this all the time, summing it up today. How do I get ahead? What is the secret of success? Like there's some sort of magic formula. Is there, George?
So I thought about my childhood, and I also thought about David Goggins, and they kind of relate. And you got to seek out the discomfort. If you seek a life of ease, life will be hard. If you do what's easy, and I think Les Brown said this, if you do what's easy, life will be hard. If you do what's hard, life will be easy. And I think about my family, and I look at my dad, and we started no money, like super dirt poor, and my dad's become highly successful, and I respect him hugely for it. And I've learned a lot from him. The older I get, the more I realize that. But he didn't have a life of comfort, and he didn't give me a life of comfort, even when he became to the point he was able to. So I grew up in Oakville. So I had friends that went to Appleby College, lived on Lakeshore. They got brand new cars. My dad hit a point where he could have done the same for me, and he didn't. I got a 1996 Sunfire 4-door in red, and I hate red in cars. But he's like, this is your car to drive, and I expect you to show up Monday through Friday at 5:30 p.m. to put in 2 hours a night to help with the business to pay for it. I was like, what kind of dad is he? I wish I had his dad. Now I'm like, thank you, Dad. Thank you, God, for giving me these parents, So I think that's a key thing, is maybe by second, third generation, they just live a life of ease, and it's not good. It's like if you go to the gym, because we know we love the gym topic, and you go through the motions and you check your phone, you wasted your time. You didn't feel any pain, but you didn't grow. And that's the irony of life, is you need to find the pain to get the pleasure. It's really strange, but the more you embrace that pain in a healthy way, the more you're going to get the longer term pleasure.
What concerns me are the people that are not happy with their life, and that's okay. But I come to them and they complain, I don't like any aspect and it's just not great. Fine. What if you could, I ask the same question to a lot of people. If you could close your eyes and have your ideal life, your chosen life, what do you want it to look like? What could you work towards if you could have your best result? About 80% of the time, you know what I'm told? I don't know. I'm like, you don't know. So you can't actually even envision what this perfect life could look like if you could build it. So what the heck are you working towards then? Then you're just drifting aimlessly. Like it's impossible to build it if you can't see it. I love the idea of manifestation and being able to see it and then creating it, but I see it. I mean, I love what you said earlier on is you're always working towards, you can see that big picture. You can see that big goal, but you got to be able to create it. And then you got to do the steps towards it. And that's where I challenge anybody that stop focusing on what you don't like in your life and what your problems are. Start really thinking about what the heck I want to do with it, what I want my life to look like. Like really start to think big picture. And if you don't know that, start walking, go to yoga, meditate, go to the gym, do whatever, eat better, but start clearing your mind to be able to have these bigger pictures. And then you're going to hit towards something. Otherwise, if you don't see a big picture of where you're going to head, then you're just going to accept failure, and that's going to become your lifestyle. And I don't think you want that.
No. And I did notice, and sorry to call it out, but I think it's funny. I do want to, picture what my wife's going to look like as well.
That was a Freudian slip, by the way. But you know what a big measuring stick was for me, George, was this, that I think at this point in my life with what's going on, I have more stress than I've ever had, as far as it's there, the pressures are there. When I go to sleep at night, I go to sleep beautifully almost every night. I can go to sleep at will. When I wake up clear. So I have all this stuff going around, yet I'm able to let it go and I can have clear sleep, wake up refreshed. That to me is my measure, because I can tell you most of my life, I went to sleep very stressed, woke up very stressed, and then it was a feeding cycle off of itself that never ended. And I can't see how people can get ahead and can be clear if they're fogged. And I tell people, get out of the fog, get yourself cleared up, move forward, make a plan.
Well, the pain of not knowing where you're going is what creates, the embracing of the fog, because it's so much easier to satisfy short-term pleasure, sleep in, have, drink alcohol to excess, whatever, smoke, and put aside the fact that you don't know how to find that true pleasure or passion in life. But I want to ask a question. So the last time you went to the office, because I think you're in your home studio right now, how did you get there?
I drove. I took an automobile.
And how were you able to do it so simply? Like, look at the way you say it. Well, George, I took an automobile. I went to work. You had a vision of what you were going to do. You knew what your destination was. You had a plan to get there, and you had the discipline, i.e. car, to take you there.
Well, if you're going to start off with all that, there was a calendar and there were entries. I'm going to wake up. I'm going to eat breakfast. I'm going to go work with my personal trainer. Then I'm going to go to work. I'm going to work my hours and come back, going to record a podcast. Then going to go to yoga. Then going to work some more. But it's already all been pre-decided. Like when I went to bed that night, I had the vision of what the whole day is going to look like. It was already decided. And then I put it down, and then I feel certainty. I don't have to worry about it because my calendar is going to direct me where I got to go because I already put it in there. I love it.
Yeah. Do you run your calendar, or does your calendar run you? I mean, I think it's huge. And I'm with you. I've got 4 different calendars because I have different aspects of my life I plan out. You got faith, family, which includes friends. You've got fitness, which includes health, eating, diet, working out, yoga, meditation, Buddhism, whatever it may be. Then you have finances. What's your financial plan? What do you do? How many bank accounts do you have? Like Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. You put one for long-term investments, one for something else. And I won't go down that road, but it's a good book. What about also fun? You got to have some balance in life. So what do you do for fun? And faith. So all these things, they should all be in your calendar. And if you plan your calendar, you're planning your life. And if you plan your life, you should have a successful life.
Well, that's where and I love talking about organization productivity. That's a whole separate episode. But, this all of a sudden for people is their calendar, is their to-do list, is their checklist notes. This is so fogged with so much information. How do you expect it to do something as far as just thinking and getting things done? And that's where having those applications where you have a calendar for a calendar and a to-do list for a to-do list and your Evernote or whatever for your checklist, this is allowed to just use to think and process, and that's it. I love also on a to-do list, if you're looking at bigger picture and you were talking about writing something across the board. I use it electronically, but I make a goal of big goals, big list. What do I want to work towards? And I set myself a goal. Like I want to get this done in 5 years. I want to get this done in 10 years. And it's the greatest feeling on the planet when you have a 10-year plan and then get it done in like 3 years. And you're like, wow,
Oh yeah.
But if I did not write that down and look at it and marinate on it, you know what's going to happen? I'm just going to drift and do my day-to-day stuff, but I'm never going to get ahead. And that's the problem. I don't want 100%. Failure. I only want success. And that's where I tell people you need to work towards a bigger purpose. You're on this earth. Why are you here? Like, I love bringing full circle to what you talked about. What is your purpose? Why are you here? Do you want success or do you want failure? What do you want? There's your 2. Pick one.
And codify it, write it down. So not just in the calendar. So I've asked people, they're like, oh, I want to hit top 3% on the Toronto real estate board, George. Okay, well, what's your work back plan? What do you mean? Well, what's your work back plan? Write it down. Like, what are your goals? I can tell you right now, if I look on my wall, or at least before I started moving, I had visuals, like 300 agents in my group, 3,000 doors on multi-door properties I want to have. So these are these big goals that people would say, are you crazy? I don't know. Call me crazy. I don't care. This is what I want. This is what I'm going towards. And, I think that that's a key piece. And I bet you have the same, whether it's in your journal or wherever you keep it. That's one of the keys to success. And in fact, this last, topic, everything we've talked about to this point, and I think it's your brilliance and your planning, all answers the question, how to succeed and get ahead. Everything we've been talking about has led to that.
It's funny because when I put it together, it comes to me in an instant, but they, like you said, they all kind of flow together, but there's a way of getting there. And that's where I encourage people to very much hit the subscribe button, share your comments, talk to us. Like, we'd love to hear from you and answer you back as far as what's your measure of success? What's your measure of failure? Do you think we're full of it? Do you agree with what we're saying? Let's have this interactive, because this is very big life structure things for people as far as the big game plan. And it's not something to shrug off, because the mentality of where you're at, that will drive you at the end of the day. And again, thinking these things through, where do you want your life to be? Is it somebody else's fault? Are you taking accountability for yourself and where you want to be? You know, that's all where it comes down to it. And we'd love to hear from you. And George, you know, knowing that you host seminars on it, and I'm not surprised, you know, because you are one of the most motivated people I know, three-time
Thank
guest
you.
on A Chosen Life. You know, I appreciate you sharing your energy. People wanting to reach you, what's the best way to reach you, George?
On my social media, great question. I should have it better prepared, but you can find me at GT1 Realty group on Instagram. You can find me on George Tremis, GT1 Realty on Facebook, and you can find me on LinkedIn as well. Just look up my name. If you type in Tremis, you'll find me on Google. Tremis. So as in Tango, RE, money, IS, Tremis.
Love it.
And then one last thing, Jonathan, I want
Yes,
to
please.
offer all the people at Kormans, if you so choose, I'd love to give you a free workshop on the performance pyramid. And I'm going to ask you to have me back in April, because that's the publishing date for my book.
Amazing. Well, the second it's launched, we will be right on there, and we would love to. I can't wait to read it personally and absorbing it. And it's so great to hear, because you have so much. Your brain never stops. There's always a new idea. There's always something, and for you to be able to take that and motivate others to think and to grow, I can only imagine, George. So we're looking forward to the big launch. Keep us up to date, and we'll definitely have you back on. And it's funny, I'm laughing now because it's almost the end of 2022, and 2023 is right around the corner. It's amazing how quickly time flies.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it'll be amazing to see in a few years where we're all going to be at, because you know what? The hustle don't stop.
I look forward to it.
And as we sign off, you know, we always pull out the pipes, right? And we say, keep living the chosen life.
Looking good. Looking good.
Thanks, brother.